And we would like to start with our session, Introduction to Biceps for the Cloud DBA. First of all, we would like to welcome you all here and online to our session. And if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to ask them. We will try to answer them. We have a little bit of small handicap because I can't see you really because of the light, but just ask the question and we will try to answer them. Okay, first of all, we would like to introduce ourselves. Here we go. My name is Frank Geisler. I'm Data Platform MVP from Germany, and I'm very, very happy after 2.5 years to be here in front of a live audience and to speak about a technical topic.
I'm Timur Dudhasch. I'm a cloud administrator working at the GDS Business Intelligence with and for Frank. And I'll manage today the second stage of this session, the demo.
Yes. And we will present you a live demo. So we will start a little bit after the agenda, which we have here. So what we will talk about will be, first of all, we will talk a little bit about infrastructure as a code. What is it and why does it might make sense? Then we will talk about what exactly Biceps is. We will give you a short overview of different elements of Biceps with which you can build your Bicep scripts. And of course, and this is why Timur is here, we will show you some demos and we'll show how this will look like. So first of all, I would ask Timur, please just start the demo. You don't have to understand what Timur is doing right now. We starting it now because it will take a little bit of time. So while I'm talking, this can be deployed in the background. So yes, so Timur just started the deployment of our Bicep scripts, and after the talk, what we will do as well is we will put the demo scripts on GitHub, so you can just have a look at this and can download it. And okay.
I'll hand again.
Yes,
to you.
Thank you, Timur. Okay, Timur was doing some strange things, and now I will try to explain what was happening. Okay, first of all, we will talk a little bit about infrastructure as code. So, what is infrastructure as code? The infrastructure as code is something you can do if you are working with a cloud. And what you can do is you can automate the process of provisioning infrastructure. And the thing on Biceps is there are different things how you can do infrastructure as a code. The one thing is you can do it imperatively in PowerShell, where you just give new commands, new Azure VM, or something like this. Or the other thing, and this is something which you as DBAs, I think, know very well, is you can use a descriptive language. If you're using T-SQL, for example, you're having the exact same process. What you're doing is you're describing which data will I like to have. And what you do here with Biceps is you use a descriptive language to just say which kind of resources would I like to have. Then another interesting thing, what you can do if you're using infrastructure as code, is you can put all your scripts into a versioning system. So if you just click something in the Azure portal, for example, you don't have a version history of this. But what you can do if you are just writing scripts, you can put these scripts in your versioning system and you put them right there where your project is as well. So you can use them within your deployment process. So while you're deploying your project, first step would be you deploy your infrastructure, and then after deploying this, you would deploy the project on the infrastructure. When I'm talking about infrastructure, I'm meaning all things in Azure, not only infrastructure as a service or something like this, and you will see how we will deploy Azure SQL database, which is a platform as a service, as you all know. And the other thing is, if you have scripts, these scripts will always generate the same things. So it is not if you just click through the portal and then maybe you have a bad day and don't remember to click something or something like this, you would get different results. But if you have a script, you just let the script run as Timur has done. It was just one line of code, and then the script will execute and will deploy everything to the cloud.
Yeah, it gives you a certain level of confidence
Yes.
of the script.
Yes. So the infrastructure as a code process looks this way. You have some kind of versioning system, like for example GitHub, like Azure DevOps or something else. And the idea is you're writing or you're altering your infrastructure code. You check it in, and you have a deployment process who is aware of this check-in process, and then will automatically deploy your infrastructure or your resources to Azure. So why should we use infrastructure as a code? As Timur said already, it is an increased confidence, because you know if this works one time, it will work all the time, right? The other thing is what you can do as well is you can manage multiple environments. So what you can do is you can write these Bicep scripts, and the Bicep scripts can be managed through parameter scripts. So you could, for example, you have the same Bicep scripts who roll out the same resources, and you have different parameter scripts. One parameter script is, for example, for a development environment. The other parameter script is for a production environment. And what you can do in this parameter scripts as well is that you can choose, for example, different machines. Like, for example, if you're in a development environment, it only rolls out a small machine or a small Azure SQL database. But if you're rolling out the exact same Bicep script, from which you know that this works in development, you can roll it out in production with a much larger machine, with a much larger database like this. And the other thing is you can better understand your cloud environment, because through this infrastructure as a code, you also have some kind of documentation, because everything which is in your cloud environment is documented in the infrastructure as code if you do it the right way. Yeah, the only thing if you do this is, or the only valid thing to deploy resources would be through these Bicep scripts and not through the portal, for example. So let's just have a quick look at imperative versus declarative, and which is the advantage of this. So if we are talking about on imperative, we're talking about shells like, for example, Bash shell or Azure shell, and the script has create commands, or if we're thinking about PowerShell, it has new commands, new Azure VM, something like this. The disadvantage of this is that the script is more complex to manage, because you have to implement error handling yourself. So, for example, if you have already a certain machine or a certain database rolled out, you have to cope with this and have to see, well, if the machine is already there, don't create it again. And the other thing is, if you're a little bit longer in the Azure space, you will recognize that the PowerShell commands, so the PowerShell commandlets, tend to be deprecated or updated. And so if you write a PowerShell script 2 years ago maybe, and this script deploys your environment, there is no guarantee that this will work still, right? So if we look at the declarative side of things, we have other things. We have things like JSON. JSON is just description of your environment, and we have biceps. I will come a little bit later to where there is a connection between biceps and JSON. We have Ansible and we have Terraform. And the interesting part on declarative deployments is that before the declarative deployment starts, there will be kind of calculated a difference between the current environment and the script. And only the different things will be rolled out. So, for example, if you're rolling out a storage account or something like this, right? Or not one, but 4, right? And from these 4 storage accounts, 2 already exist. They will be touched. It will only the additional 2 will be rolled out, which is a very good thing on this. And just to give you a short overview how this looks like, If you have imperative code, this is PowerShell. These are some PowerShell commands to create a resource group and to create a storage account. And on the right side, you see how the declarative approach looks like. It's just a description of what you would like to have rolled out in your environment. Okay, so now let's have a look at what is Bicep. So Biceps is Azure Resource Manager template language, and it is used to declaratively deploy Azure resources. It is a domain-specific language. For example, if you would like to program an arcade game or something like this, Biceps would not be the best choice to do this. But on the other hand, if you would like to have Azure resources rolled out, Biceps would be the perfect fit for you. And the intention of this, of Biceps, in comparison to JSON, because the concept of Biceps is not new. As you might know, there is a concept in Azure which is Azure ARM templates, and Azure ARM templates are in JSON. It's the same approach. The only difference is that, and I will show you a slide on this a little bit in a little while. The only difference between Biceps and JSON is that Biceps is much easier to understand. JSON is more like a language which should be understood by a computer or machine. Biceps is more like a language which should be understood by people, right? It's maybe if you know a little bit about Kubernetes, there is the same thing. There is on the one hand in Kubernetes the Kubernetes manifests are written in YAML, and YAML is also simplification of JSON, and it is transferred to JSON under the covers. So the benefit of Biceps is a simpler syntax than JSON, and what you can do is you can break down your deployment into small modules. So you maybe, and these modules are also reusable. So maybe you have a module for a SQL database or something like this, and you can reuse it not to only create one SQL database, but maybe to create 100 SQL databases, for example, with the exact same module. And another interesting thing is within JSON, there is an automatic dependency management. So you have the possibility to just depend on other things you created upfront. For example, if you're creating a virtual machine, what you need upfront is you need a virtual IP address or something like this. And through this dependency management, it is guaranteed if you write your Bicep script the right way. This first, the IP address is created, and after that, the virtual machine is created. And another thing is there is some type validation. I will come to this a little bit later, and IntelliSense. And the best tool to write Biceps code is the Biceps extension for Visual Studio Code. You just go to extensions, type in Biceps, and then you will find everything you need to use Biceps in Visual Studio Code. Here we have a Biceps example where you can see there you can have some parameters, you can have some variables, and you have some resources which are declared here. I will get to all the parts of this a little bit later. So how does Biceps work? So the tooling which you use for writing Bicep scripts, there is kind of a tool or the Biceps tool. What this is doing, it is transpiling. It is creating JSON script from your Bicep script, and you can do it vice versa. If you have an ARM template, for example, you can build a Bicep script from this. Or on the other hand, if you have a Bicep script, and you can transform this to ARM. And there are special commands like AZ deployment group create, for example. What this will do is this will deploy everything which is in your Bicep script into a resource group. So how does it work? So you have the template author. What the template author is doing, he is writing this Bicep template. Then there will be, while deploying this Bicep template through this command, which you see at the bottom, the Bicep template will be transferred to a JSON template, and this JSON template is an ARM template, which then will be executed against Microsoft Azure. If you compare JSON and Biceps, I know this is maybe a little bit hard to read, but this is not the point of this slide. The point is, on both sides of the slide, there is the exact same code which does the exact same things. And you see the Biceps code on the left side is much more brief than the ARM template code, which does exactly the same on the right side. So when is Biceps the right tool for you? Biceps is the right tool if you're Azure native, because there is a big Azure integration of this and big support of Azure. And the other thing, compared, for example, to Terraform, is that Biceps does not do any state management. It's like maybe you can compare it if you're using SQL projects in Visual Studio. It's the same. You don't maintain any state. The only thing which you have in the SQL projects in Visual Studio is you describe the a state only through create scripts. And this is the same in Biceps as well. You only describe which resources you would like to have. And if you are coming from the ARM side of things, then there is an easy transition to Biceps, because every ARM or every JSON script by itself is also a valid Bicep script. Okay, when is Biceps not the right tool? It's not the right tool if you use multi-cloud environments, because it's Azure only, or if you have already an existing tool set, like, for example, you have a big deployment where you maybe use Terraform or something like this. So let's have a look at the different elements of Biceps. What I will show you are, on the one hand, resources. I will show you parameters. I will show you variables, and I will show you modules. All these parts, all these components are parts a Bicep script is made of. And after I explain this, I will hand over to Timur, and he will show you how this will look in practice. Okay. First, example of a resource. If you're writing a Bicep script, and a Bicep script is nothing more like a text file, like JSON, right? If you define a resource, you define it by, on the one hand, by a symbolic name. In our case, this is app service plan. The symbolic name can be used afterwards in the Bicep script to refer to this resource. I will show it in a bit. And the other thing is you have to give it a resource type. So which type of resource would you like to create, right? And then, dependent on which resource you're creating, you have to define different properties. For some properties, there are default values, so you don't have to define each and every property a resource has. You only have to define the properties you would like to change. So after doing this, we can use this resource in another resource. As you can see here, the resource we did on this slide is an app service plan. We did it with an app service plan, but it doesn't matter. I'm just talking about how a Bicep script looks like, so it doesn't matter what component we use here. So we have an app service plan. In our app service, we have to refer to our app service plan, and what we can do is we can do this by the symbolic name we defined earlier, and then we can use some of the properties of these component. Like, for example, in this case, we need the ID to bind our service app to our service plan, right? Next thing, which is a very mighty thing in Biceps, are parameters. So where you use parameters? You use parameters to get some values from outside into your Bicep script. And you can use them, or it is a good thing to use parameters if there are things that change between developments. For example, if you have some names of resources which change, or if you have locations which change, if you have some settings like price settings which change, all this can be handed over to your Bicep script via parameters. And a good thing about these parameters are that you can, or the parameters can come from a parameter file. So you have a file, you write in all your parameters, and you use this file for your Bicep script, and it will just deploy whatever you defined in your parameters. And the parameter, there are several things if you use a parameter. First of all, a parameter name. What's important, as always, if you're programming things, is if you have a parameter name, then or if you have names, then you should think about some naming convention, so that you know, well, this is how I name parameters, for example. The other thing is parameters also have a data type. There are different data types, like, for example, string, so or number, for example. And what you can do as well is you can give the parameters a default value. If no value for this parameter is given, then the default value will be picked, right? If you don't give a default value for a certain parameter, and if you deploy a Bicep script by this, then you will be asked interactively which value should this parameter have. Using parameters in a template is very easy. The only thing you have to do is you just have to put in the parameter name at the place where you would like to use it. For example, in this case, we have the parameter which is called app service app name, and we just write it behind name colon. And now Biceps knows, well, this is a parameter, and tries to fetch the parameter from a parameter file, or tries to use the default value. And if all this doesn't work, then it will ask you what should be the value for this parameter. What you can do with parameters as well is you can define allowed values. What you can do here is you can just put in this like this, a list of values, which you put in front of the parameter. And now you can only, if you're giving values to the parameter arcade game, you can only pick these values which we given here. In any other case, if you just put in any other value, you would get an error, which says, well, you can only use these 3 values. Another thing for what you can use in Biceps are variables. Variables don't change values from outside, but what you can do with variables is if you can have values inside your Bicep script. For example, you have a complex expression, you're calculating something or something like this. Then you can use a variable to store this, this value, which is the result of your expression, and can reuse it within your Biceps template. There is one thing: a variable must have a value. On the other hand, variables in Biceps are not strongly typed, so you don't have to give the variable kind of a data type or something like this. And valid declaration for a variable would be this. It starts with var, then the variable name, and then some value. What you can do in Biceps as well is you can use conditional values like this. In our case, we have our variable arcade hero. And arcade hero is, and there is a condition which checks, is arcade, which we given in as a parameter, is it Pac-Man? If it is Pac-Man, then the true part will be executed, and the value for our variable will be Pac-Man. If it is not Pac-Man, and you know there are the Galaga and Outrun as other choices, then the value for our variable would be some vehicle, right? What you can do in Biceps as well is you can split up your Bicep scripts into modules, and you can reuse your modules. For example, you have a network module right there, and you have different Biceps templates, and these different Bicep templates, one is maybe for solution A, one is for solution B, can use the exact same network module. A Biceps module is nothing more like a Biceps file, right? And this Biceps file must be loaded into your Biceps template by just declaring it as a module. And this looks this way. You just write module, then a module name. In this case, it was my module. You give it a file path name where the Biceps script you would like to use as a module is located. You give it a name, in this case, my module. And what you'd have to do then is you have to pass over all the parameters the Biceps module is expecting. So some tips on this. For example, what you can do easily is we talked about giving values a default value. And what you can do is you can, for example, access on resource group and brackets .location, you can access the location of the resource group you are deploying to. And in this case, you could do it that all your components, which you or all your resources which you deploy to this resource group will be deployed to the exact same location. The other thing what you can do is you often if you're deploying resources to Azure, you have to assure that the name of the resource is unique, right? Because the name of the resource is part of a DNS name or something like this. And what you can do here is you can use the unique string as a function which give you a unique value, and you will put in this unique string you will put in some seed value. In this case, a good idea is to use resource group ID, because resource group ID is also some value which has some which is rather complex, and so this is a good value to have it as a seeding value for your unique string. Another thing you can use as well in Biceps is string interpolation. So as you maybe know from PowerShell or something like this, you can build strings just by giving a $ and then putting in some value. So in this case, our storage account name would be SQL bits and then some unique string value which will be given back from the function unique string. Okay, so I've showed you some of the things a Bicep script is made of. And now I will hand over to Timur, who will show you how this looks in practice, and we will look at our example.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Okay, any questions until now? No questions? Okay, so Timur.
Perfect. Okay.
Let me just.
So let me check the actual state, what we deployed here. This looks good. Don't bother the warnings. This actually happened when I added a module, and it's actually a valid warning, but it didn't bother the deployment, so I didn't look much into it.
Yeah. It's a warning, not an error, right?
You could say that. But it looks good. Let's see what it looks like in the Azure portal. Here we refresh it and we see the RG demo SQL bits. This is our resource group, the Bicep script deployed for us. It deployed several resources, including a VNet, a virtual machine to connect to certain services, and an SQL server with an SQL database. And for the virtual machine, some additional resources. Let's see what it contained, our PowerShell, our Bicep script. What we did is we invoked a script, apply test bicep.ps1, and if we log into it, it does the following. It connects to the Azure account, select the correct subscription we have here, and it starts the PowerShell command new asset subscription deployment.
And that's all.
Yeah,
this
that's
is
all.
Everything you need to deploy a script. And maybe one further thing. You have two scopes where you can deploy Biceps or where you can deploy resources. The one scope, as Timur did here, is the subscription level. You need this if you would like to deploy resource groups, right? Because a resource group is below the subscription level. The other thing is, what you can do as well is you can deploy to a resource group. This is group deployment or something like this. And in this case, the precondition for this is that the resource group already exists. So this will not create your resource group.
Yes. Okay. We have here some variables which declares, okay, where are actually the templates? So the actual Bicep files and parameters for it.
Yeah.
And if we log in our root folder here, we see our Bicep file. This is actually this which gathers all modules we will use. To the modules, I'll come back a bit later. But if we look here into it, we can see, okay, we used the module resource group, which is here in a subdirectory. Directory.
Well, maybe what we did here is we split the project so we have a directory modules where we put all modules in. This is not mandatory, but on the other hand, it is much easier to read and much easier to manage the project.
To go a little further into this, this makes it clean.
Yes.
You have here a file which includes all modules I want to use. We have the apply Bicep, which I can just and deploy it again.
And maybe one thing here, Timur could do this, right? Because if you just use the deploy again, the script will run and it will compare what has changed in our Bicep scripts, which is at the moment nothing, right? And then it will just deploy nothing because everything which is in the Bicep script is already deployed.
Exactly. And
pardon? Well, this is a good question. What you can do is, if there is the question was, if there is a change, will it prompt you or will it just do it? So you can use your Bicep script in two ways. The one way is you just deploy it and then it will just do it, but it will pay attention to what you already have deployed. So, for example, if you deployed a virtual machine and the only change you did is you just changed the size of the machine or something like this, the Bicep script will not destroy your machine, and it will just scale it, right? The other thing, if you are not sure what the Bicep script will do, is you have some kind of, I don't know how the parameter is called exactly, but you can do something like a what if. So you can do what if I will apply this Bicep script to this subscription or to this resource group, and then it will show you what it will change. Yeah, you're welcome.
And in this subdirectory, we have the actual modules we got here. This is a small collection of some others I needed for this demo, and I just put it into this root folder I got here and just copy it into it. Because I already used it, I knew, okay, it will work. So we have here modules for the SQL database, the firewall rules for the SQL server itself, or the resource group itself.
Yes.
Okay. What we have also here is the parameters file. This is where we actually set the names for the modules. Where we say, okay, we want this module and this module, which I just used like 2 months ago. I can use the same, but I need other parameters.
Yes.
A different name, a different scale of a virtual machine, and some other properties we can set exactly here.
Another thing, what you can do is if you have different environments, you have maybe a development environment, you have a test environment, you have a production environment, you can have different parameter files for these different environments. You only have to maintain these parameter files because all the Biceps modules, everything is in place. And if you do this, you can just use different commands to just deploy a development environment, to just deploy your production environment, and it's as easy as this. And the other thing is, usually if you're working on a bigger project, because these are only some Biceps files which deploy resources. But if you're working on a bigger project, these Biceps files would be part of your project, right? So and you can build them into your deployment pipeline. So first of all, the Bicep script will be executed. Then it will build some kind of environment within Azure. And after the environment has been built, then on this environment, your project will be deployed.
Yes. And the question is, what did it actually do? We can watch it here in the resource group we actually created here, and go to the deployment section here.
Yes.
I can just I'll pick the network interface and watch here what it created.
Yeah. Maybe one thing to the question with the how can I see what changed, right? In this case, what Timur showed with the different steps in the Azure portal, there was no kind of history or something like this, because with the script that Timur executed, we created the resource group from scratch and then did all our deployments within this resource group. If the resource group already is there, then on the page which Timur showed a little bit earlier, you can see what has changed or what has been done through this deployment.
Yes, and what we here see, some may know it, that's an ARM template. So
yes.
What Bicep then does is build it into a JSON file, and so that Azure can understand it as an ARM template, and will just deploy it to the subscription,
yes.
And we get what we did.
And the good thing is, Biceps in the command shell is used by the command Bicep, right? And what you can do with the command Bicep is you can transform Bicep script to ARM templates, vice versa. So maybe if you have an ARM template, right, and you don't know, well, I'm writing the Bicep script, but I don't know which parameters, or not which parameters, which properties you use, how are they called, something like this. What you can do then, you can take your existing ARM template and just create a Bicep script from this. And so you see all the parameters, or not the parameters, but all the properties you use or you should use, you can see in your Bicep template there.
And vice versa.
And vice versa, right?
Yeah. So if we run Bicep build and the related Bicep file with it, it just created the JSON file which we can actually use and just upload it manually and deploy it. Let's look into that. This is the JSON file which it produced, and if we look correctly into that, it's the same we would see here in the.
Just go please to the What you can see is this is a massive JSON file, right? If you see on the side, this is the structure of the JSON file. And it's complex to read.
So if I wanted to set up this environment, I just showed it to you. This is what I would write.
Yes.
And to be fair, if you're not into JSON the whole day, this is hard to read.
Yes.
This is a big difference from this to this.
Yes. So what's very interesting on Biceps is very brief, and there are only the informations in the Bicep script which are really necessary, and not all the things to just build some structure for this.
If I go next week, I want to deploy another VNet with some other properties. I can just add it here and leave my module as it were. I know this module works. I can just adjust my my properties I want to add, and generate my confidence.
And the other thing where you can use this as well is if you have different clients, and each of the clients has the same or nearly the same environment you used to create. You can just, for each of the clients, you just write a parameter file. And you execute the Biceps template for client A with the parameter file for client A. You execute it for client B with the template for client B. And you have the confidence that each of the client environments are the same, except the differences in your parameter files.
If you are looking for, okay, what can I actually use? You can just go to this resource type.
Yes.
I'll do actually this all the time and watch, okay, what is available? What can I use? What properties can I set?
Yeah.
No, I use the resource groups. It doesn't have this
not
many properties, but
yeah.
you'll get the point.
Yeah.
And you have a very, very good documentation from Microsoft here.
Yes.
Where you can look. Okay, what's the latest API? Do I use the latest API? Which is new? What is new? Can I test the new API for the new development environment? And yes, and just getting new features.
And the other thing is what's interesting on Biceps as well. Could you please show the Bicep script again where we have some resource? What you can see here is that you're referring to a certain version of this resource. So in this case, you will every time you will deploy this resource, you will get it in this version. So even if Microsoft is developing this further and get some new properties or whatever, in this case you will always have this version of the resource, which is interesting as well, because if you just do maybe add set new VM or something like this, you cannot determine which version of the resource will be rolled out, right? Ben.
Versions get retired, and what happens to the script if they get retired?
This is a good question. I'm not sure about if they get retired, but if they get retired, I would assume that the script won't run. But I'm not 100% sure if they do it, because it is built the way that it should run all the time through this versioning here. Okay.
Yeah, we prepared another thing, one last thing.
Okay. So what we essentially did in our Bicep script is we rolled out an Azure SQL database with a pre-configured demo with a AdventureWorks LT demo, as you all know, right? So when we access the database, we're able to see all the tables which are in this database, right?
And let's just check if we can log in there.
And the importance of Biceps, you can see if you go on the Microsoft documentation, whenever there is something where you see ARM templates, there is also a tab where you can switch to Biceps. So Biceps is really, really important part of Azure, and it is really baked into all the Azure environment. So Timur is connecting. Looks good. And if you just click on the database, There are all the tables which are in our Azure, which are in our AdventureWorks LT database, right?
So if you are looking into building new modules like this, you can export existing resources you have and just decompile it to a Bicep file.
Yes.
Then you get an idea, okay, what it looks like in a Bicep file, and you can orientate with that file, and can develop for a new resource, new modules.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
so
that's
I
it.
think the demo is through, right?
You change?
Okay, so let's switch to the PowerPoint slides again, but there is only one slide left. This slide is, we would like to thank you, and please fill out the feedback forms. And are there any questions? Yes? Pardon? I don't hear you, sorry. Yeah. The question was how to use Biceps with Terraform, right? The advantages. Okay, the advantages from Biceps compared to Terraform is that you don't maintain state with Biceps. In Terraform, you maintain state, and this is, as I heard today, a little bit complicated sometimes, and this is nothing which is done in Biceps. Biceps only has a description of your environment. On the other hand, if you have a multi-cloud environments, then Biceps is not the right choice, and you better stick to Terraform. I think there was a question as well. Yes, sir? Ah. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, exactly.
yes, sure. Yes. Okay. Okay, the question was if you have some secrets in your Biceps code, you wouldn't hard code them for sure in the Biceps code, but you would need or you would use key vault, and you have to use a wrapper for key vault. And if you have to use the wrapper, or if you still have to use the wrapper, I have to say at the moment I don't know. So what we do usually is we use this wrapper as well. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? So if there are no more questions, we would like to say thank you for your attention, and we would like to wish you a nice conference.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.